Okay, so in this video we're going to have a go at replicating this nail varnish bottle. It's going to be quite a simplistic video, so I'm only working on modelling the outside shape. I'm not going into the detail of working out screw threads and things like this, so it's quite an early simple video that will take you through some of the basic skills. The other thing I'm not doing is breaking this down into separate components, so it's purely just about learning some modelling skills and trying to be accurate with the way we do things. So we're going to start by creating a new file. When I'm using Autodesk Inventor, this version's 2019, I always go to new and create a file from the list of templates, because one of the worst things, in my opinion, that can happen when you first start using this program is you accidentally find your way into the US measurements files, which means you're working in inches, and then you might not realise straight away, so it can waste a bit of your time. So I always use metric when I'm choosing my template, and I go for the standard millimetre IPT file. That's an Inventor part file to create my project. So when you start, you get presented with this grey screen effectively, and the first thing we're going to do is start a 2D sketch. And I'm going to work on this plane here, this XZ plane. So this is like the ground plane, if you like, the base of the object. And the object we're modelling is the nail varnish bottle you might have seen from my drawing a day. So I'm going to start with the base of the bottle here. Okay, so I'm going to be working on that base first of all. So I click the plane there, and it takes me in. Now, if I hold the middle mouse and move the screen, I can move the screen around, and also the mouse wheel, if I scroll in and out like this, allows me to scroll in and out of the screen to make it bigger or smaller. So it's like the zoom and pan functions there of the program. Now the first thing I'm going to do, because the bottle there, I can just show you, is a rectangular shape, but it's got some slight sort of arcs poking around the outside. So what I'm going to do is start with two rectangular shapes, one slightly smaller than the other, and then plot out my not my arcs, my splines in between those. So I'm going to start with a rectangle, and I've measured the bottle. The outside dimensions of the bottle are 28 millimeters, so I'm going to type 28 in without clicking any boxes or anything like this. Press the tab key on the keyboard and type 28. Obviously you can click into these boxes as well to do that, and I'm going to press enter on the keyboard to initialize that. Now you'll notice the sketch here, these are solid lines, so I don't want these to be solid lines. These are just going to be planning out my design, so I'm going to choose the construction line option up here, okay, and that turns those to like a dashed line there, so I know that can be used for measurements, but it's not going to feature as part of the actual drawing. Now I need another box inside here, which is going to leave a wall around the outside of 1.5 millimeters. So I use the offset tool at the top there, click the outside and start dragging inside. Now I don't again have to sort of like control this and get it exactly to 1.5. I can just type into the keyboard 1.5, again not clicking any boxes, and just press enter, and that will give me the contour that's drawn it on the outside there, which I don't want, unfortunately. So let's try this again and make sure it goes in the inside. There we go. Okay, and again, what I've forgotten to do there is make those construction lines. So I'm just going to press escape to come out of the tool I was using there, and again click my construction line with the line selected. Now what I'm going to do is produce a spline in between these points here from the outside edge, lining up, inferencing that point there, going through the midpoint. You'll notice when I reach a midpoint it comes up green like this, and then come to the other midpoint. Now at this point you tend to find, oh, what do I do with my line effectively? All you have to do is either press the OK part there, or you can right click and choose create, and that will create the line for you. You'll notice the spline extends out, but the solid line there is actually the line I'm working on. So I'm just going to go on and add another interpolation spine there, okay, in between the other side. So I'm going to go from this point here, inferencing that point there, and going through the midpoint there, and I'm going to do this on all sides. Now you probably could use a pattern or use the mirror tool, for example, to speed this up if you get a bit more familiar with the program, but I'm just going to go through and draw these manually at this particular time. But I'm just making sure, I'm being very mindful of the fact that I'm getting things exactly in the right place, because it's very easy to kind of put things in the wrong place when you're drawing in this, especially if you're working quite small. So it's sometimes useful to kind of zoom in, and you can see that point that's inference there, okay, to the edge, and you can see it's actually on that point there as well. So I can zoom into various points and find these. For midpoints, it's sometimes easier actually being a bit zoomed out, so you can actually see where the middle of the line is. But some of these points here, if I'm trying to inference these points in, I might want to zoom in just a little bit like that and then tick my button. So I've got my basic outside curves. Later on we're going to round these edges slightly, but we're not going to do that at this stage because it's often better to add fillets and rounded edges after you've actually physically modelled the part in 3D. You've gone from 2D to 3D. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the trim tool, and I'm just going to trim off these bits where they're overlapping. So I'm just drawing a line through at the point where I'm cutting through the bit that I want to cut off, and it's cutting to that that point where it intersects. You can also click the point like that, okay, if it's easier, but sometimes it's easier to draw the line because you can cut or trim multiple lines at the same time. So there we go, we're just adapting this and doing that. So at that point I've got my outside shape for the extrusion, and I'm going to finish my sketch. So I've come out there, I'm just going to pan around. Okay, this is called the view cube. It's quite useful to kind of see the view from the object from different views and stuff, but again I'm using my pan and my zoom tools to move around the shape as well. Now what we're going to now do is extrude this up, because we've got our base shape of the bottle, and we're going to actually extrude this up here. I believe the height was 35 millimeters from the base, so I'm just going to choose the extrude tool there, make sure that's selected. It selected it for me, and in here in terms of my height I'm going to choose 35 for 35 millimeters and click OK. So that's my basic extrusion, and I've done the bottom part of the box. Now there's a very small little ridge up here, and that's what we're going to have a go at modelling next. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is actually choose the plane where we're going to start doing our next sketch, the plane being this top surface of the object here. So we're going to go to start to new 2D sketch, click the plane at the top, and we're going to zoom in a little bit so we can see what we're doing. Now what we want to do is be able to take this pattern and offset it from the outside, but at the moment it's not finding that, because what we have to do is project the cut edges. What this does is it finds some edges that I've drawn, and you can now see I can sort of highlight or hover over these lines, and they now exist as actual things. So what I'm going to do now is contour from that edge, or offset from the outside edge, and I'm coming in. Okay, so the outside dimension I believe was 28 in total. This inside dimension of the middle part in width is 20, so I'm going to come in 4 millimeters like this, just typing in 4 and pressing enter, and you'll see now it's changed the contour, so it has created the actual contour of the shape. It's not a square shape there. So I'm going to finish my sketch again, and I'm going to do a further extrusion, taking this just up by 2 millimeters from the top there. So I'm going to choose this here, and again change my extrusion to 2 millimeters. There we go. So we've now got that slight ridge just above there created on the bottle itself. Now the last thing we're going to do, we're gilding the lily a little bit here, but you might be able to see just slightly on the bottom there's a very, very slight indentation that kind of creates a sort of like an arc shape along the bottom of the object. Okay, so to do this what we're going to do is use the revolve tool, and we're going to scoop out a section from the base of the object to create this sort of concave area in the bottom. Okay, so this time we're going to create, we're going to work from a plane. Okay, so we're going to go to plane here and offset from plane, because we want to work within the middle of the shape, so we can use the revolve tool effectively. And we go over to origin here, and we look for one plane. Now we can use this one here and do an arc going across this way effectively, or we can use that plane there and do the arc in the opposite way. I'm actually going to use this one because it seems to make more sense to me like this. Now it's asking for the distance from for the offset there. Now we're on the edge of the shape here. We want to be offsetting into the center of the shape there. We said this was 28 millimeters across, so I believe it should be, if we go minus 14 there, that should put us at a plane dead center in the middle of the shape there. Okay, and we can see that we're in the middle of the shape. Okay, now what we're going to do here is we're going to draw a sort of a half spline section to revolve around and chop that section out. So we're going to start a 2D sketch again, okay, and this time we're going to select the plane that we've just created. Now it's quite difficult when you're looking at it like this, because we're actually working inside the shape. So what you want to do is choose the tool at the bottom here that says slice graphics. You can see the hotkey there for that is F7, and if we choose that, we're now working in the actual area where we can actually see on the plane through that cross-sectional view of the shape that we can actually see there. Okay, now once again I'm going to project my cut edges of the shape so I can see the outline here, and I'm going to move to the middle of the shape like this, and the indentation from the bottom here on the bottom of the shape, it kind of goes in about 1 millimeter again. So I'm going to zoom right in so I can see. I'm going to find my midpoint again. Again, sometimes a bit tricky. Let's try this from zooming out first. Find the midpoint, there it is. Again, I'm going to zoom in so I can see that my line is going up at 90 degrees, and I'm just going to type in 1 millimeter like this, and that is going to be the point at which the section revolves around. Now, to speed things up a little bit later when we use the revolve tool, I'm going to turn this in to a center line like this, because then the computer will know that that is the axis of rotation when I'm coming to rotate the object around. Okay, I'm now going to draw the rest of the shape, making sure I'm back on a solid line now. Okay, and I'm just drawing this shape in. So at the bottom here, we're going to come across to that point there, which I believe should be 11 millimeters, because that curve on the inside is about 22 millimeters across. So I'm going to type 11 there, making sure that is coming again across at 90 degrees. And what I'm going to do is a construction line going the other side, exactly the same place. And this is going to allow me to create my interpolation spline again to create that curved section. So I'm going to choose 11 millimeters there. This hopefully is a construction line. I don't think it is, so I'm just going to check that. No, it's not. We're going to make that construction line there. Now I'm going to choose my interpolation spline like this and go from here through that middle point there and across to the other side. Notice I'm checking the endpoints there, and I'm ticking to make sure I'm happy with that. And the last thing I'm going to do is just trim off this part that's overlapping, so I'm left with that one section. I've got two lines, one there, one at the bottom, and I've got my axis of rotation there. Now we can't really see that because we're obviously inside the object now, but if we choose the revolve tool and we hover up to find that little section, hopefully we can find this somewhere around here. Can't find it very easily. Let's try again. Struggling to find that rotation. We're just going to go back in and just check this sketch again, that we've got something there. I believe we've done this correctly, but we'll just have a little look. Okay, it's not quite finding it, but I think I've got all my lines. I'm just going to check that that bottom line is in place as well. Let's just put that back in again to make sure there is actually a line there. Might have deleted the whole line. Okay, let's try that, see if that makes it a bit easier for me. Still not finding the extrusion. Okay, so we're going to try something a little bit different. Normally that works perfectly fine. Okay, we're going to try and create a complete solid shape this time. So we're going to create that into a solid line as well. And hopefully that's going to make it so we can find this revolution. There it is, there's the shape. Okay, so this time we found this. As I say, normally we can put a center line there and it will revolve. It might be just an issue because we're working inside the object there that it hasn't found it. And it's going to ask us for the profile, which obviously is drawn in there, and I'm going to choose the axis, which is this axis here. Now you can see it's showing me what this is going to look like, and at the moment it's on this tool here, which means join, which is not going to produce anything because it's basically adding material to existing material there. I'm going to choose this one here that says cut and click OK, and what it's done is it's cut out an area. It's very hard to see that there's actually a curved section there, but because there's no shading on the shape at the moment, but you can sort of detect that there's an indentation there. Okay, so we've kind of got the basics worked out now for the actual shape. Okay, we've got the basics of the bottle worked out. Okay, we're going to put some slight rounds on this, but the last thing I'm going to do actually is shell out the inside. So we can see there is a wall thickness here. The wall thickness is around about 4 millimeters. I'm going to do that before I do any rounding off of edges or filleting of edges, because it just makes it a bit easier, or it works a bit easier like that. So I'm going to choose the shell tool at the top like this and choose the surface I wish to shell, which is, there's the opening in the top. Again, I'm not concerning myself too much with the screw threads and things like this. You're fully welcome to have a go at this later if you want to make things a bit more complex for yourself, but this is only an early video, and we'll probably revisit some of these skills later on, and we're just doing a visual interpretation. So I'm going to go to shell there, and I'm going to make my shell thickness 4 millimeters like this, and then click OK. So we've now got a hollow shape like this. Okay, now to make this more realistic, we'll be changing materials later on, so we'll be selecting glass and things like this so we can actually see through and you can see what it's done, but we can assume that we've got a 4 mil shell, and we can assume that this is an indentation at the bottom there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, or pretty much the last thing we're going to work on, is the actual lid of the bottle here. So I'm going to start another 2D sketch, this time working on the top of the object like this. And we should find, I believe we might have a center point. No, we haven't. So again, we're going to project our cut edges. Hopefully that will give me something to work from. Still nothing. So we're going to try projecting some of this geometry. I'm going to project the geometry of the circle like this, because I know that circle has got a center point. And obviously I'm working on the top, so I'm going to draw my circle on the top. Now I measured this before, and it's a measurement of 19 millimeters at the bottom of the lid. So I'm going to type in 19 there, and that's a 19 millimeter section there. Okay, our final thing we're going to do is extrude this up to give that part height, so that inner section there we're going to extrude up. Notice it will select whatever profiles you choose, and you can add to the profiles as you're going. So I'm going to just make sure, sometimes this is a bit tricky to find the profile you wish to extrude. We're going to go into the center, and we're going to do it in stages like that, so those two sections together, the hole on the inside and the actual outside as well, so we don't end up with a cylinder with a hole in it. And the height of this extrusion is actually equal to the bottom part. Okay, it's equidistant, so we're going to go 35 millimeters like this. Okay, the only thing that we want to pick up on is there's a very slight taper on this edge. I didn't measure the exact angle of the taper, but I'm going to make an assumption that it's around about 1 degree. So I'm just going to type in -1 like this, and you can see it's very, very slightly tapering in on the side like that. Okay, so that is pretty much the whole shape completed, albeit the top is obviously a moulded, injection moulded lid. The bottom has obviously come out of a mould, in this case a sort of a glass moulding process sort of thing. So all of these will need to have slight angles and tapers on the edges and things like this. So we're just going to put a very slight fillet on all surfaces of 1 millimeter, or all edges of 1 millimeter. So I'm just going to select the whole shape. I think I can do this like that, and we're going to select 1 millimeter as a radius like this, and then click OK, and you'll see now it's going to let me do that. It's going to allow me to do that with most of the blends. Not quite happy with that because it's missed out some of these things, so we're going to do this a little bit slower this time. So I'm going to go to fillet and choose a loop, and I'm going to select my surfaces individually. So we're going to do this surface and this surface. Notice it's highlighting and showing you which ones you're working on. Okay, sometimes it can be a bit confusing. It's maybe worth doing this in stages, not all at once. Okay, but I'm going to do this surface at the top as well, and just these surfaces on the side here, if it's going to let me do that. There we go, and the top. And I think that is all of the surfaces that I want, although we've missed a few on the bottom surface here. If it's going to let me do that, yes it is. Excellent. I believe now that is all the surfaces I wish to produce. Let's see if it's done it this time. No, we've still got some problems. Okay, we're going to move to edges to make sure that we can only choose the blends that we want. Let's try again. It's better. Again, always working easier if you zoom in, because you can actually see the effect of what you're actually doing to the object as you zoom in as well. It might be that this top blend needs to go a little bit smaller so it doesn't affect the lid. Okay, so we might have to reduce that down by about half a mil. The Civ accepts that. Oh, it has this time, that's fine. Okay, so that is pretty much where we want to be with this shape. I think that's I'm pretty happy with that. The last thing we're going to do is add a few materials to this so we can see it as a sort of a completed object. So up the top here in the appearance browser at the top, we're going to select this, and we're going to choose some materials to kind of add to the product. So I'm going to open up my materials menu from the home here, and the top is obviously a plastic type material, so I'm going to choose plastic, and I'm going to find something that vaguely resembles the sort of colour. Okay, so I'm going to use this off-white colour like this to create the top here. Okay, so I can just select the area that I want to colour, and then click these individually like this. I'm just selecting these a surface at a time. Now if you produce this in parts, I could obviously just choose the whole part and select it as a material, and this is the right way to do things, but as I say, we're just going through some of the basic skills at the moment, so it's helpful just to be able to paint individual surfaces and stuff as we go. Okay, the other surfaces are obviously glass, so we're going to go to glass, and we're going to choose a clear reflective glass, I think, for the outside surfaces, these bottom ones, and I'm going to just drag select around like this and choose clear to make all of those surfaces into the glass. So I'm hoping that now is the right materials on all the surfaces that we're going to do. So we're going to do just a very quick and rough render of this object to kind of see what it looks like. But if we go to view first of all, we're going to make the visual style realistic. So it's making it more realistic. I'm going to hide this plane here that I created earlier. So that is the see if we can find that plane. There is work plane 1. So we're going to right click that and just turn the visibility off, so I don't want to see that in the rendering. I'm going to change my view to perspective as well to kind of make this more realistic in terms of the look of the thing, so it's not an isometric view, it's not destroyed in any way, or distorted, sorry. And I'm going to put the shadows and the reflections on like this, okay, so that we get a good rendering. Now we could click ray tracing, but due to the computer I'm using, it's not a particularly powerful graphics card, so it would take a long time to render. So we're going to go into environments at the top, go to Inventor Studio here, and then go into render image, and we're going to start doing a quick render of this shape. I'm just going to make it quite small, but 640 by 480. Again, there's lots we could go into here in terms of changing lightings and cameras and things like this, but we're just going to do a very quick render to see what this kind of looks like. So we can click that button there, and then we get the render, and hopefully we should be able to see now. We've got the reflection kind of being rendered in, and we should be able to see that inner shape that I was talking about. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger on the screen. Again, the better the computer they've got, more up to date your graphics card is, the quicker this is going to render. Yeah, I can see as I'm recording this, it's actually slowing down my webcam and stuff like this, so hopefully this isn't slowing down the recording too much. But there we go, we're getting quite a good interpretation of the ball there. We'll just leave that for a few more moments. Obviously, when you get to the point that this has been completely rendered, there's the option there to actually save your image and output it into other programs. You can save it as an array of formats like JPEG and PNG and things like this for purposes. So you can use it for presentation visuals in another program, and also you could edit it via some sort of desktop publishing or paint program, I suppose, like Photoshop going forwards. So there we have it, that's the completed rendering. As I said, you can click this button to save it somewhere if you wish to keep that rendering, and hopefully that is a fairly accurate representation of what we was trying to do there that we done with drawing today in a previous video. So hope you like the video and have a go yourself. Good luck.